Ladies and gentlemen, this is Charles. Today's story takes us to Spain and involves the country's first recorded case of cannibalism. A son turning his violent words against his own mother, brutally murdering her. What's even more horrifying is the motive, the refusal to buy contraband substance. Dubbed the Ventus Cannibal, the killers dismembered his mother's body into over 1,000 pieces. He stored parts in his freezer, fed someone of her bones to his dog, and when arrested, had a pot boiling on the stove and with human ribs inside. On February 23, 2019, in Madrid, Spain, an elderly woman rushed into a police station. She seemed panicked as she reported that her best friend had gone missing. According to her, she hadn't seen her friend Maria Gomez in most of the months. The police initially assumed it might be due to natural causes, thinking perhaps Maria has passed away and her family hadn't told the elderly woman. To ease her worries, they asked for more details about her missing friends. And the woman explained that Maria was 69 years old and lived with his 26-year-old son Alberto Sanchez at 50 Navasareda Street. A few weeks ago, they had parted ways after agreeing to meet at the park the following days. However, Maria never showed up. Initially, the woman assumed something had delayed Maria. But as time passed, she realized she hadn't seen her friends for weeks. Due to her age and occasional forgetfulness, she hadn't reported this earlier. At the station, a detective named Gil overheard the conversation and immediately grew suspicious. Gil was familiar with Maria's sons, Alberto Sanchez. Over the years, Alberto had been arrested 12 times for abusing his mother. However, each time the case was dismissed as domestic dispute, and Alberto was released without significant consequences. Gil wasted no time. Accompanied by a partner, he headed to Alberto's residence. Upon knocking on the door, they were immediately hit by a strong nauseating stench. As an experienced investigator, Gil recognized it as the smell of decomposing body. Gil detained Alberto Sanchez and demanded to know where Maria was. Alberto nonchalantly responded, "She's gone." Without wasting a moment, Detective Gil began searching the house for Maria's whereabouts. His first stop was Maria's bedroom when he noticed a handbag on the bed, with that appeared to be strands of hair sticking out from his opening. Carefully, Gil unzipped the bag. Inside, he found Maria's severed head. Horrified, Gil immediately called for reinforcements via his internal line. It wasn't long before forensic experts and detectives arrived on the scene to assist in the investigations. When they cautiously opened the handbag to examine its content, Maria's decapitated head was fully exposed. The skin on her lower jaw had been ripped off, making the sight even more gruesome and unsettling. But as shocking as the discovery was, it was merely the beginning. The appetizer of Alberto Sanchez's nightmare acts. The police made their way to the dog cage in the bedroom, where they discovered 2 severed arms and tissues from the buttocks. Following the trail, they moved to the bathroom, where they found extensive blood stains leading toward the kitchen. What awaited them in the kitchen was a scene so horrifying that it would remain etched in their memories forever. On the kitchen counter, the police saw a plate besides a fork that was stabbed straight into a human heart. Upon closer inspection, the forensic team discovered that the heart was missing a piece, as if someone had bitten into it. The horror didn't stop there. Inside a pot on the stove, they found a bone with teeth mark, indicating it had been gnawed. In the refrigerator, they located 6-foot containers filled with human remains. On a dining table, there was a human leg neatly placed as though ready to be served. Outside the house, in a hidden black garbage bag, they found more grisly remains: intestines, brain fragments, skin, and fat scraps. So with all these evidence, the missing piece of the heart, the gnawed bone, the containers in the fridge, a chilling thought crept into everyone's mind. Could Alberto Sanchez have eaten his mother's flesh? So let's take a look at this ridiculous motive for murder. After conducting a detailed examination of the body fragments, forensic experts determined that there were over 1,000 pieces of remains, all of which belonged to Maria Gomez. Due to the extensive damage to the body, it was impossible to establish an exact time of death. However, Forensic experts estimated that Maria had been killed approximately 1 month prior to the discovery. In the interrogation room, Alberto Sanchez appeared unnervingly relaxed. His mouth was stained, though no one dared to test or question what these stains might be. With a casual mind, he admitted to the police that he had murdered his mother. Alberto explained his actions with chilling nonchalance. After killing his mother, he had no idea how to dispose of her body. He decided to dismember her, keeping some parts in the freezer to prevent them from spoiling. The rest of the flesh he fed to his pet dogs, believing it was a practical solution. When asked why he had killed his mother, Alberto's answer was as shocking as his crime. He bluntly stated, "I didn't like Maria." He described how he was in a state of anguish and frustration that day because Maria refused to give him money to buy drugs. Adding to the absurdity of his reasoning, Alberto claimed that during this argument he heard voices coming from the television, telling him if Maria dies, all of her property will belong to you. So without much thought, Alberto Sanchez acted on his impulses. Attacking his elderly mother, he strangled Maria, causing her to suffocate to death. He then dragged her lifeless body from the bathroom to the kitchen, where he used the saw and butcher's knife to dismember her. The edible parts were kept and stored for consumptions. The non-edible remains were hidden in an inconspicuous corner outside the house. So for the next 2 weeks, Alberto continued living his life as though nothing happened, until Detective Gill arrived at his door. Seeing Alberto's nonchalant demeanor during questioning enraged the police. So how could someone be so detached after murdering his own mother? What kind of person, they wondered, could commit such a heinous act against the woman who gave him life? Alberto's violent behavior didn't arise overnight. His troubling backstory revealed a pattern of escalating issues. First is about his loss of his father. In 2008, when Alberto was only 15, his father passed away. This marked a tuning point as Alberto turned to drugs to cope with his grief. And then substance abuse made him increasingly violent and prone to violent outbursts. At the time, Alberto's older brother still lived at home and kept his behavior in check, preventing him from harming their mother. When the old brother moved out to work in another city, Alberto became the sole companion of his mother. Though Alberto was an adult by then, he remained unemployed, living off Maria's money to fuel his lavish lifestyle and drug habits. Despite her older son's pleas to bring her to live with him, Maria refused, as Alberto was her youngest child and she believed he could still change for the better. After Alberto's older brother moved away, Alberto's abusive behavior began to escalate. He started physically abusing his mother, using various methods of torture to force her into compliance. Whenever she refused to give him money, beatings, hair pulling, and withholding food while his common texts. Unable to endure the abuse, Maria had called the police for help multiple times. Unfortunately, the authority dismissed the incidents as mere domestic disputes, leaving Maria trapped in an increasingly dangerous situation. And this cycle of unchecked violence continued until the day Alberto took her life. To Alberto, murdering his own mother appeared as casual as slaughtering a chicken. His lack of remorse sent shivers down the spine of the officers handling his case. Unable to make sense of his cold detachment, the interrogator officers quickly handed Alberto over to mental health experts for further evaluation. In conversations with the psychiatrist, Alberto provided disturbing and twisted reasoning for his actions. Throwing away or burying the meat seemed like a waste, he said. He added, "I didn't want to bury her like we buried my father." Alberto even cited example of African tribes practicing cannibalism, justifying his action as logical and not disrespectful to his mother. And he said, when you think about it carefully, eating her made more sense. When the cause of Alberto Sanchez became public, it sparked a widespread outrage across Spain. It was the country's first recorded case of cannibalism, and the details horrified citizens. People demanded the courts impose the harshest possible punishment on Alberto for his heinous acts. Finally, in April 2021, after years of investigation and preparation, the case of the cannibal son went to trial. In court, when the judge directly asked Alberto Sanchez whether he had murdered and consumed his mother, Alberto changed his story. He claimed that he was instructed to kill his mother by voices he heard while watching TV. These voices, he alleged, came from neighbors, acquaintances, and celebrities, compelling him to act. However, Alberto denied dismembering his mother's body and refused to admit to cannibalism. Despite the overwhelming evidence, in the face of the irrefutable evidence, Alberto was sentenced to 15 years in prison for murder. Due to the gruesome nature of the crime, prosecutor successfully requested an additional 5 months to be added to his sentence. Alberto was also ordered to pay 19,000 euros to compensation to his older brother. As Spain does not have the death penalty, the verdict sparked outrage across the country. Many questioned why someone guilty of such heinous acts was not given a life sentence. Criticism mounted when it was revealed that Maria had called the police 12 times in the past, seeking help for her son's abuse, but her cries for help had been dismissed as domestic disputes. Online, citizens expressed anger and fear. Many criticized the lenient punishments, arguing that 15 years of imprisonment was insufficient for taking a human life, especially under such brutal circumstances. Others voiced concerns about what Alberto might do upon release, noting that if he could murder his own mother, he would likely pose an even greater threat to society. From his prison cell, Alberto wrote a self-reflective letter, attempting to explain his actions. He said, "I've been thinking about what happened. I believe I have been ill for a long time. I kept hearing voices and experiencing hallucinations. All of this led to the worst moment of my life. To escape, I started using drugs." The public overwhelmingly rejected Alberto's explanation. Many felt his claims of mental illness were a convenient excuse to reduce his sentence. One online comment highlighted the frustration. It says, "If mentally ill people can get reduced sentences for murdering others, does that mean normal people could be pardoned for eliminating dangerous individuals with mental illnesses? If everyone used mental illness as a defense, what would our world become?" The case reignited a fierce debate over the balance between justice and mental health considerations in criminal cases. On the contrary to popular belief, cannibalism is not limited to deranged or psychopathic individuals. Historically and culturally, instances of cannibalism can be categorized into 3 main types based on the motivations. The first one is survival cannibalism. This occurs during extreme circumstances, such as famines or disasters, where people resort to consuming human flesh to survive. A well-known example is the practice of ancient China. It says 一子而食. It means exchanging children to eat in ancient China. Parents unwilling to harm their own children during famines would exchange children with neighbors for consumption. And the second one is learned cannibalism. Found in isolated tribe or uncivilized communities, cannibalism is sometimes practiced as a tradition to intimidate enemies during wartime, as part of religious rituals or ceremonies. And other motivations are like these categories include cases like Alberto's, where the act of cannibalism is driven by individual psychological or pathological factors. However, current research has yet to provide a clear explanation for the motivations behind such behavior. Most experts classify this type of cannibalism as stemming from severe mental illness or psychopaths. Among the many cannibalistic acts throughout history, some are so horrifying that defy comprehension. One of the most terrifying examples comes from the Revolution United Front, a rebel organization in Sierra Leone. Despite its name, the Revolutionary United Front was no champion of revolution. Instead, it was a militant terror group, infamous for its brutality and greed, driven by a desire to control Sierra Leone's diamond mining operations. In the child soldiers and terror tactics, the RUF forcibly recruited children as soldiers, indoctrinating them into a life of violence and cruelty. And are also tortures and mutilations. Prisoners endured unimaginable torture. They were skinned alive, limbs were amputated. The rebels would bet how long their captives would survive such abuse. The RUF took their cruelty further by cooking and turning human flesh into soup. They forced prisoners and villagers to consume the meat under the threat of being next in line for dismemberment if they refused. The RUF viewed anyone who opposed them as an enemy, including UN peacekeepers. In their eyes, consuming the flesh of their victims wasn't just an act of survival, but a way to gain strength and instill fear, consolidating control over the civilian population. In 2002, the Revolutionary United Front was finally dismantled. However, when the government tried to tally the deaths toll from the reign of Charles, the numbers were too vast to calculate accurately. Hell was empty and all the devils are here. Stories like that remind us that the greatest evils often walked among us, disguised in human form. These atrocities push the boundaries of what humanity can endure, leaving scars on society that may never fully heal. Even animals exhibit gratitude and compassion, yet humans, endowed with higher intelligence, sometimes commit acts that defy morality. Maria Gomez's murder is a tragic example of this. If the police had taken her 12 calls for help seriously, if Maria had been able to leave her abusive son behind, perhaps her life could have been spared. But there are only what-ifs. Tragically, Maria can never return to the living. I'm Charles, dedicating to bring you in-depth case analysis. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tune on the notification bell. Have a case you would like me to cover? Feel free to share in the comments section. I'll see you next time.